Ooh, knocking things over. Yeah. One question that people don't want to ask, but they probably should hear anyway, that you may need to worry about if things go downhill for you in regards to your job and whatnot, is how low can you live? And they go, oh, but I don't want to have to live low. Yeah, I know, none of us do, you know. But sometimes we're in a situation where there's not a damn thing you can do about it. So how low can someone live? Well, actually quite low. If you've got a van, it's recommended that I severely recommend using a diesel. And I've seen people with wood heaters inside vans, and they've lived in vans. But basically, you can turn to a point where all your fuel is wood. You can get a hell of a lot of food by foraging. Some of the things I've seen, one bloke showed him going out in the forest out in Texas during the spring, I think it was. God, blimey, food! Oh my gosh, the amount of trees with fruit on it, and this is just like, and these trees are like native. You guys have got it so much better for native things you can eat in the forest. You got no idea how good you got it in the US. You know, we're running around on the public lands, you know, where they've gone and planted fruit trees. You know, the local government's planted fruit trees in the footpath or near the river to make it look nice, and then you can, you know, ransack some fruit out of that. There's the other one is, and you really should learn this, is foraging. It's good to learn it anyway. And there's a little bit on my channel, but another one is eattheweeds.com. There's a whole stack of other people with foraging. A Thatcher 85, he's got a few different ones. But there's so much stuff, edible brassicas and everything that you can forage. And these aren't bad food either. Some of them are a bit, ew, you know why they're called a weed. They don't taste too good. And others, like shallot mustard, and that, it actually ain't that bad. You know, it's sort of like eating cabbage and stuff like that. And between that and, you know, round here and along one of the rivers here, we've got heaps of fruit trees and that. And even where my sister lives, there's a, you know, they plant a lot of fruit trees, the local government, so there's plenty of fruit there. But yeah, diesel vehicles are the best to go if you're going to use anything related to, if you intend to be a van dweller and do anything related to wood fires. I have seen diesel bulldozers pushing up entire logs that were still on fire to create a fire break when bushfires have been on. I've seen that a lot of times on TV. I haven't actually seen it in the real, but it's always happening over here on TV because diesel don't light up like petrol does, and if things go wrong, things can go really wrong in regards to using petrol vehicles and having wood heaters inside of them. You know, you can even be like my uncle did and do what they call have a wash, which is basically lather yourself up and then sponge yourself off using warm water. If you can heat a tub of warm water on some sort of wood-fired device and stay in the same room that the wood-fired device is in, it may be an idea to have, not too close to the wood heater mind you, a bit of plastic on the ground or even a little rim that you can put, you know, some black plastic to keep the sides of it up by having like a little bit of wood around so that the sides are deliberately held up, and then, you know, have a big tub of water and lather up and rinse off. And it is a bit of an arduous process. I've had to do it, but it can be done and you actually feel quite nice afterwards. The other one a lot of van dwellers use is they usually go to gyms and you pay like your fee. Like there's one of them that gives you like the first 6 months free, and then it's like $20 a month after that. So you effectively you can get your whole first year for $20 times 6, what, $120, and you can have a shower every day for a year for $120. I mean, no joke. And that may be an option, but the other one that the van dwellers use when they don't get to these gyms and use them, I've even heard of one bloke using a rock climbing place, and they had the facilities there. And you got to now I lost my train of thought. Yeah, baby wipes. That's the one. If they can't get to the gym and have a shower or whatever, because they've had a long day and they've got an early start the next morning, they wipe themselves with baby wipes. And would you believe it, there's now a product targeted at women that is essentially, over here, that is essentially baby wipes anyway. And they just say, oh, you can, use these to go into a toilet block, use these to wipe yourself off to freshen up a bit. But, van dwellers have been doing that with baby wipes for a long time. When they, have a bit of a long day and don't get time to go to the gym, or just too worn out to go there, or don't really feel like a shower, or are in a place where they're sort of further away from any of these gyms. But it's not unknown to wash up. My uncle used to do it, and I should demonstrate, and I will demonstrate eventually how to do it, because we had a hot water system blow up and we were forced to do it. But the real thing is, so long as you keep warm, that's one of the big ones, that you have a fan of a kind in the summer, or even shade is good. You'd be shocked at how good shade is at cooling things, just by experimentation with plastic bottles full of water around here. It's surprising how much the temperature can change by being in the shade or out in the open sunlight. But keeping warm is a big thing. And there's a lot you can do with sweaters and whatnot. But also wood-fired stuff is really the way to go. I mean, our winters aren't anything like the US winters, nothing like the US winters. But yeah, if you keep warm, you're halfway there. And firewood don't cost you anything. Like, essentially speaking, it is just, it's flipping woods everywhere, as long as you're in an area that's not desert. And there's even some of the desert here where there's a lot of dead trees in areas of the desert here that you could use. So yeah, it's sort of, it's not terribly grand going low, but there's a few things such as little $20 submersible pumps with a shower head on the end, homemade wood heaters and wood stoves, small solar systems that may only be, 40 watts or 20 watts or something like that, and you'd be surprised at how good things can be for how little an outlay you actually put out. The old Harbour Freight's got the old 45 watt amorphous panels, and I wouldn't expect them to last any more than about 5 years before they become pathetically inadequate, like they just don't charge your battery. But you'd be surprised at how good you can go with such a small amount of outlay. And the other thing is scavenging, and nobody wants to do dumpster diving. Look, if you don't like foraging, it doesn't matter. You can go in dumpsters. Holy hell. I think it's about 4.4 pounds equals a kilogram. But my uncle got 327 kilograms out of one dumpster. It took him 3 days, or basically 3 trips at night, to empty this whole dumpster out of these spuds. I'm not joking, there was about 2 spuds that weren't any good out of those whole 327 kilos. Now times that by 4.4 and you got the pounds. That's the sort of food you get. When he was dipping his hand and putting his hand in the lucky dip, as I call it, getting stuff out of a dumpster, out of a particular supermarket chain, I'm not joking, we had food, it took us months to eat it. I mean, it took him 2 weeks to get this food. It took us, as a family of 3, like more than 3 months to eat what he got in 2 months, because a lot of it we just froze. Bread, there wasn't, this store sort of goes for more the cheaper line of stuff, so everybody was getting all the cheap bread, but they also stocked the fancy bread. We never got one loaf of cheap, normal, standard bread. Everything we had, lemon, rye bread, German sourdough, Swiss bread, flaming the raisin toast, multigrain. We're eating like kings, you know. I used to, no worries, I'd eat a kilo of steak in one hit, you know, and a whole shitstorm. So I literally don't know how I ate as much as I used to when he was putting his hand in the lucky dip or getting stuff out of the dumpster. But, you know, you'd be surprised, a bit of scavenging, what you can sort of get just by foraging for food, scavenging out of dumpsters. And the biggest thing is having mechanical knowledge and being able to, you know, get stuff welded, or even knowing what second-hand dealer you got to go to be able to rustle up an old wood heater or whatever, a pot-belly stove or something. And, you know, you can go a lot lower than you in your mind believe. It is quite easy to live without electricity altogether, even without a solar system. You'll need quite a few candles, but you know it's not completely unknown. The other one that I see here is Burmese refugees. They were in a United Nations refugee camp as of about 2009. The civil war had been going for 62.5 years, i.e. they ain't no chance they're ever going to go home. But the thing we notice here, having dealt with them and that, and me, you know, parents sort of know a couple of them and that, they move into a house and they say this house is too big, and the whole family will just live in one room. The other thing is they get up at dawn and go to bed when it's dark, and then they don't use any lights. And this is sort of some of the things they picked up living in a refugee camp, that, you know, they weren't given much by the UN, you know, oh God blimey. They had, literally, it was like this: fish paste, chili, salt and rice, and that was the only things. And they do blood tests and say, oh yeah, you're fine. I don't know where they got their greens from or what was going on, but man, they had such a little amount of stuff, like, you know, you didn't know that it was actually that bad for a United Nations funded refugee camp. I would have thought they'd get a little bit better food than they did. But yeah, you know, these things are all doable. And you don't sort of need to panic and live in survival mode. No, I'm going to wear myself out, panic and living in survival mode all the time. I've probably, you know, I've already touched on worry about living standards before, but yeah, you know, you can live far lower than you currently are, and so long as you're warm and you're fed, and between firewood and, you know, possibly van dwelling so you don't have to pay rent, and foraging, you know, you'd be surprised how little of money you can get along on. And a lot of other people, you know, they sort of, you know, you may need to go to charities, or buy even second-hand clothes, and I bought plenty of second-hand clothes, and some of them are better than the blasted new clothes I've bought, to be honest. The second-hand clothes are outlasted some of these cheap new clothes by about 3 or 4-fold. And, you know, you may occasionally need to go and buy a bit of rice from Walmart or whatever, but you'd be surprised how low you can go. And I probably should write a whole run on this, you know, like a whole blooming blog sort of, or something on it. There's so much stuff I've got here I could put on a blog because it's just videos of me talking, but yeah, there you go.